Treasure Room Zombies by Antonio Alicea, read by the author. 1,000,000 diamonds covered the ground like morning dew. A figure with a bird on his shoulder appeared, squatting, standing, then looking at his hand. The diamonds magnified his palm lines and scars. Blue crystals morphed into constellations, then returned to ice rocks. The pirates did not know. The light diamonds came with a heavy curse, until surrounded by an ocean of zombies. Many sailors and pirates came from the St. Mary's orphanage. Francesca was a teacher there. She presented a small albino alligator held in her arms like a baby. It ate raw chicken, animal bones, and crabs. A crab antenna stuck out the corner of its mouth. It gulped it down. 1,000 orphans stared at the alligator in awe. She taught them the word alligator, and they repeated it. She told them about the adventures in the ocean, and all the orphans swung wooden swords, wore eye patches or giant pirate hats. The orphanage had 20 rooms, a courtyard, and a large cast iron cauldron bolted down to the ground. "Where's Captain Allen?" a voice yelled. Another voice yelled, "Check the orphanage." Meanwhile, Captain Allen hid in a cauldron, crouching low. Some pollen wafted up his nostrils and he held his breath, resisting the urge to sneeze. However, he saw stars as he sneezed quietly. He peeked at the sailors pushing furniture around. He hid a scroll in his boots as voices yelled, "We have to retrieve that treasure map." At this, his arm hair stood up and he felt chills. The Navy Admiral busted through the front door. It framed a man in a wool, dark blue uniform, drawing out his sword. He noticed a stocky nun with facial fuzz and a bulge at the waist. "I thought drunkards weren't allowed in heaven," the Admiral said. The masculine nun replied, "This is vanilla extract." When she shook the bottle, the vanilla seeds swirled up and sank like snow globe glitter. The Admiral's eyes focused on the anchor tattoo on the nun's arm. The nun ran out the door after hearing, "Seize the nun." After spreading out, the sailors did not find her or him. Captain Allen traced over a map with a pen, looking over his shoulders. Admiral Brown peeked through a window. His eyes met Captain Allen's eyes while a nun robe lay on the ground. Admiral Brown pointed in all directions and the sailors fanned out. They picked up the decoy map and danced in glee. Captain Allen boarded a boat with the true map, also dancing in glee. The Phoenix was a passenger boat, half filled with cargo crates. Captain Allen watched the wind flush the nearby tree leaves. It blew a peachy scent from the pastel yellow and cream white honeysuckle flowers on board. He watched the tree wave and dance like native women. A lady's bonnet flew in the air. The map flew out of Captain Allen's hands and he dived for it, barely catching it. He remembered his mother telling him that the wind was God's mercy and that the angels pushed the clouds to blessed places. It did push the boat faster away from the Navy boats. Captain Allen could see his boat, the Bravado. The anchors, the sails, and the deck grew larger and larger until the Phoenix stopped. His crew mopped the deck until they saw him. He spread the map across the table and they crowded around him. They traveled for a month to an island, then followed the map into a remote cave. They danced and sang when they saw a treasure chest filled with gold pieces, clear diamonds, and other precious stones. The men struggled to carry out the Pharaoh's coffin filled with jewelry. When they dropped it, it sounded like broken glass with a pile of diamonds spilled on the ground. However, they felt like something or someone was watching them. Then rumbling was heard, and a sailor dived under a slamming wall. "We're trapped," the voice yelled. Crashes was heard. When they lit the war torch, they saw hands punching out the ground. A zombie pushed himself up and climbed out of the dirt. 1,000 zombies surrounded them with all the exits blocked off. A crewman named Pancho aimed his gun musket at one and blew his head off. Captain Allen noticed a zombie with more facial flies than a safari zebra. He shot his gun musket, but only dazed it. The gun smoke made him squint his eyes. He dumped more gunpowder down the muzzle and shot again. Blam! The zombie whiplashed like a crashed dummy and tumbled still. It died, but a giant jackal statue harpooned a sailor and stomped another into a small crater. Meanwhile, on the Bravado, Dick watched the gold melt into a pool of sunset. It morphed into two colossuses. The metallic men scuttled the ship. Two golden swords stabbed through the walls, inches from Dick when he hid in his quarters. Two liquid gold men appeared, waking him from his nightmare. He stared at the ceiling. He tried to abstain from drinking, but drank the last of his rum and passed out again. When Dick awoke, a fly flew figure eights over a liquor bottle. A fuchsia red feather brushed his face when he turned over. A bird shadow was on the wall. Dick saw Captain Allen's parrot with a pink diamond in his mouth, and he sat up. Tink. Dick stared through the floorboard, focusing on the ground. Below, he saw a sparkle, but when he grasped it, it was only glass. Where's that diamond, and what happened to Cap, he worried. He shook his fist and chased the bird, cursing loudly. A skeletal hand wrapped around Captain Allen's boots, and he could not lift his foot. The dark was as loose as quicksand, and his upper trunk protruding from the ground. Cream white roots brushed his nose as he sunk lower and lower into darkness. He tried to go upward, but kept sinking. Captain Allen fell and rolled on a cobblestone ground, an underground catacomb littered with 30 zombies. Then Lieutenant Dan fell from the ceiling, holding his leg. A group of zombies piled over him. One bit down on his neck. Another zombie turned, exposing a blood mustache. Captain Allen fenced his sword through a zombie's head, but could not reach his childhood friend. He remembered when they was kids and they shattered a shop window, pitching stones. The elderly owner chased them from Melrose to Cortlandt Avenue. They got away. Now Lieutenant Dan was a Jamaican beef patty with cocoa bread, just something to be consumed. Captain Allen stepped back and drew his sword too late. Lieutenant Dan's legs were gone, while a zombie held his intestines like sausage links. A half-naked zombie backed up the zombie mob. When it raised its hands, they kicked and punched it down. It yelled, "Stop, no!" But the zombies kept rushing through Captain Allen. The Good Samaritan zombie got up and protested but failed to stop the crowd. Captain Allen, taking advantage of the distraction, jumped up to reach a wall opening. He tried unsuccessfully several times. The zombie stood over the good zombie, stomping down on it, till brains came out his nose and forehead. Pancho and another sailor lifted stones from a block entrance. They strained until they discovered a giant trapdoor spider. Its eyes shined glossy against the hairy body. Pancho could not see the spider, but his sailor was wrapped in matte white spider webs, tight as a straitjacket. His face turned blue. Pancho drew his sword and punched through the spider's abdomen as it dropped from the ceiling. He fenced, slashed, and sliced the spider, but it kept attacking. Finally, Pancho killed the spider, but his arm bled from the fang bites. The catacomb skeleton swirled and circled, and his wound turned purple. A skull-faced zombie mumbled and stood over Pancho. He took a deep breath, but still saw days glitter. It bit his body, barely missing his jugular vein. With blood freckles, Pancho spun around, but the zombie grabbed his shirt. It ripped the back off and continued to pursue him. The zombies fell to the ground after Pancho punched them. He looked up at the dangling sailor. He thought, damn, that sailor looked like General Rousseau chicken. And he climbed up a giant star-shaped net. They raced for the dead sailor with grumbling stomachs. Pancho ripped the web off his face like tape, then continued upward. The zombie grunted every time he kicked it down. A giant bumblebee shell looked pissed. What if it had a drop of life left? High up the web, he ripped web like gift paper. He ripped the pants off the corpse, biting down on the hamstring. He was so hungry, he could see up the sailor's boxes. He could see the lips on the piss hole. I let that other zombie eat that he planned. When he looked below, the zombie was gone. Then someone yanked him off the giant spider web and he fell. He laid on the ground, dazed, watching the zombie consume the remainder of the web sailor. At the subterranean catacombs, pitch blackness covered Captain Allen. He lit a wall torch and his eyes glowed neon orange. When he spun around, the giant jackal statue towered over him. It shattered the perfume basin and the liquid spilled on the floor. When Captain Allen dropped the torch, the ground carpeted a fire under his ankles. He tap danced until he ran into a fiery man. Captain Allen watched the metal piece grow larger and larger, forming a spear. The Pharaoh's coffin swung open, whistling, and slamming closed again. He hid inside, sweating up to his ankles. The jackal statue wedged his spear between the coffin lids, working it back and forth. Finally, the jackal statue lifted the coffin above his head and pitched it into the fire. The coffin lay flat, and Captain Allen's sweat now came up to his ears. A shriek echoed out of the coffin, and he passed out. Captain Allen's parrot flew over 100 dead zombies and perched over the cave entrance. Dick, Captain Allen's lieutenant, stood at the vicious jaws of the cave. Standing by the cave entrance, Dick heard the parrot yell, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." He ran into the darkness and disappeared. Dick wheeled in a cannon. He lit the fuse, and the jackal statue fragmented into a million pieces. A zombie's eyes stared at the parrot, flying in circles. Then boom, the cannon pointed upward, blowing up 10 zombies to salsa. A separated arm walked on his fingers. Dick stomped it like a snake till it stopped moving. The Pharaoh coffin opened and Captain Allen climbed out. He coughed from the smoke and rolled on the ground. Then he threw sand in the air and the zombies covered their eyes. Dick spun the cannon around and boom, he donutted 3 zombies and the parrot flew through all 3 untouched. When it perched on a rock, something clicked and the entrance wall lifted. The ground quaked until the ceiling rained needled rocks. One stuck out of a zombie's head as his mouth cascaded blood. The light from outside now lit up the cave. 1,000 zombies lay scattered and the jackal statue was broken. Outside the cave was beautiful daylight. A medium-sized tree stood erect, with branches spread out and green leaves. The grass reflected sunlight with some shade from the trees. Captain Allen wiped his tears off with his sleeves and sniffled. 3 headstones read, Pancho, Good Samaritan Zombie, and Lieutenant Dan. He prayed, Dear God, the forgiver, the most kind, please admit our brothers into heaven. Amen. He decorated Lieutenant Dan with gold chains, a crown, and a pinky ring with a large diamond. The graves were bordered with nearby stones, and Captain Allen was relieved. The bravado boat was filled with treasure chests, ivory statues, and more gold. The pharaoh coffin was filled with diamonds. They strained and took many breaks to get it on board. Missing was most of his crew. He stretched his binoculars to see the verdant island. Dick and Captain Allen aimed boat cannons at outside zombies and jackal statues that they missed. Boom, boom, boom! 2 jackal statues shattered. A zombie exploded into a blue flash, turning to red blood. A giant bumblebee flew out the cave. They blew it up too, and the pieces rained on the water. They sailed away and stopped shooting. Years later, Francesca's orphanage received 100 more orphans and ran out of donated items. Captain Allen saw Lieutenant Dan, Pancho, and the Good Samaritan zombie in a dream. They sat in a garden surrounded by youth. A tea party with glossy white tea set. A voice yelled, "Go back and get more gold. You can give more charity before you die for a better spot in heaven." Captain Allen nodded his head. He poked out his pinky when he grabbed the cup handle. He sniffed the peppermint tea before sipping it and awoke in bed. He did venture again and returned with more treasure. The orphanage now had additional cauldrons, rooms, and food. For Christmas, the orphans ate ham hocks, sweet potatoes, and turkey. He tried to drink with Dick, but the latter gave up alcohol. They both clinked empty cups and cheered. Francesca also had more animals, included a monkey, a cat, and a ferret. The ferret would steal the captain's jewelry and hide it in odd places. Captain Allen disappeared for days and was found dead, standing up, leaning by the coat rack. His will was discovered in his pocket. It read, "Oh, the best of helpers, exalted in might, please sustain this orphanage with donations and good people. I seek refuge from the hellfire with the granter of bounties without measure. Amen. I leave Francesca's orphanage, all my treasure, property, and legacy." His signature was found along with a judge's signature. The end. Zomeo and Zombiet by Antonio Alicea, read by the author. You've reached 911. We have an hour wait time. Please hold while the operator assists others. Arlene hung up, blowing a ribbon of hair away from her face. Meanwhile, James checked his cell phone. It displayed, "Come get me or I'll kill you," along with 7 unread messages. When he called, he got a busy signal and sucked his teeth. The voicemail played Arlene whispering and zombies straining. Glass crashed in the background with thuds. Then the cell phone displayed 803 Main Street. James peeked inside the truck window, then pulled out a coat hanger. He heard someone sigh, then something squish like a drenched mop. He aimed his pistol at a limping man. A star flashed by the muzzle, and the zombie lay still with his hands praying. He laid his seat back and tossed out the gospel CDs. Then the truck rumbled with bass. Igloo, a French Montana song, came on. Blood flashed on the windshield when he hit a zombie. The steering wheel skipped up as he ran over another zombie. James' windshield crashed down along with a fallen zombie across his lap. He stopped the car and pulled the zombie over the hood. He tried to jerk the car in reverse, but the zombie held on to the dashboard. The zombie swayed left and right when he pushed the steering wheel. The GPS lady sounded like a robot having a seizure. He tried to enter 803 Main Street, but the route kept redirecting him. When he got to Main Street, the abandoned cars blocked his path. Arlene stared at the wall in horror when she heard, "Arg!" The doorknob rotated slowly, then it stopped. The door studded from kicks. A shoe stuck out the door, then pulled back in. A burnt zombie, the complexion of a meatball, peeked through the hole. It stared straight at Arlene, and she yelled, "Get the fuck away, creep!" Main Street had skeletons slumped in cars. A zombie held a separated arm like a drumstick, then glanced sideways at James. James had a pistol in each hand, rocking and rolling. Scarface, baby. The gun sight blocked the zombie's chest, then a blob of blue blood flashed. By the time it hit the wall, it was red. He yelled out, "Lunch!" A zombie's brain exploded in his skull and slapped against the wall. It was like an abstract masterpiece sliding down a cream white wall. After all the desperado stuff, Arlene was not at 803 Main Street. Arlene ran up Main Street tripping, then pushing off the ground. She found a half a skeleton with a police uniform. She grabbed a nearby gun. A number 15 bus was discovered with the door open. When she drove the bus, she towered over the steering wheel. Suddenly, the engine putted and stopped. The gas meter leaned below empty, right in front of a zombie. Somehow, it entered the bus and Arlene shot it. However, the zombie only jerked back and walked forward. The gun clicked empty. She grabbed an umbrella and poked through the zombie's stomach. At that, it caved in, spilling its guts and green slime. The back door busted open and Arlene ran out. The zombie watched Arlene's back shrink till she disappeared. A dense mist of fog rose from the ground. The zombie strained to walk faster, but only Penguin walked to her. It climbed up a small wall and scanned the streets. Its skull pounded in hunger. It could not see her, but a shriek echoed in the dark. Mitch was a zombie dispatcher with 15 years of experience. He stood up in his truck bed behind a machine gun tripod, shooting up zombies. He sang "Who Shot You" by LL Cool J until he heard a shriek. He stopped shooting, thinking, "Who's that yelling? Who's there?" He yelled, "I can't see you. Where are you?" Mitch put blue metal bullets in his gun. When he shot the zombies, they plumed fire. He also shot a building generator, which bellowed smoke. The building facade turned neon orange and the flames climbed to the roof. Arlene was in that same building running up the steps. On the roof, the ground collapsed, along with burning zombies. Arlene looked over the ledge and waved at Mitch, screaming for help. The sprinkler system drenched Arlene, weighing down her clothes. She found the building fire kit station and grabbed the extinguisher. She sprayed the zombies, then bashed them with the canister. She climbed down a knotted blanket, but only reached the floor below. The floor that she stood on caved in. She coughed in the smoke and passed out. Mitch poured water on himself and ran into the building. Mitch threw Arlene over his shoulder and held the Tech-9. The air hose smoked after he made a zombie dance. A ceiling beam crashed down, blocking the exit door. A sharp pain ran up Mitch's arm. A zombie wiped his mouth and reached for him again. Mitch could see his tonsils, molars, and teeth gaps. He dropped Arlene and kicked the zombie, but it got back up, and another zombie appeared. The zombie bit down on Mitch's nose, making him look like a skeleton. He started to sweat and had blurry vision. When he looked at Arlene, she seemed like food. "Get away from me. I'm turning into a zombie," he yelled. He stared at his hands with wrinkled forehead and high eyebrows. The gun went off when he dropped it. The bullet fragment stopped by Arlene's leg bone. She limped into a corner, frozen in horror. James pinned down the zombie, then flipped it on his face. He felt the pennies and house keys when he stuffed the grenade in his pocket. Running for cover, the explosion kicked dust into the air. A zombie rocked back and forth when he held the trigger down. "Oh yeah," he whispered. spinning the gun on his finger. He fanned the smoke and saw Arlene's silhouette. Mitch's skull collapsed when James stomped it. When he lifted his soles, the blood stretched into thin strings. He led Arlene down the fire escape, picking off nearby zombies. A zombie balanced his arms before falling to the ground. "Give me a gun, babe," Arlene yelled. Debris zigzagged down while gunshots sounded. Arlene shot crouched down while James stood over her with his machine gun. They jumped into the ambulance and sped off after hitting 3 zombies. One slid down a car grill with a bloody face. Arlene's face glowed when the building mushroomed into fire and smoke. "Go, go, go," she rushed. Arlene gazed into space with sunken eyes, then abruptly turned toward an elderly man. He cowered down. James dragged his feet toward them, gargling blood. The man screamed when James pinned him down. Arlene spat out the man's scalp and bit down again. She put a chunk of brain in James's mouth. Affectionately, he hums, in delight. Arlene and James' truck tilted to the side and screeched. The rear-view mirror showed a military convoy speeding behind them. Arlene laid in the truck bed, spraying a tripod gun. A Humvee flipped over and remained upside down. James' hand disattached from the steering wheel. He stared at his arm, stuttered in annoyance. "Fucking snacks," he yelled. "Come on! Shoot him, shoot him, shoot him!" Arlene wakes up in a field and smells vanilla. She and James sit on some sheets in front of a basket. The sun is setting. The green grass turns gray. She is slumped in the street. James is shaking her arm. The truck is folded into the wall. "Wake up," a voice yells. She touches his face. Her fingers go over his lips. A soldier gun butts James. His heart flies out his chest. She dozes off. Everything is white. The end. Water Gremlin Ninjas by Antonio Alicea, read by the author. The Water Gremlin Ninja is like the classic gremlin, except it has webbed feet, fish scales, and no ears. A variety of gremlins have been discovered: Rex gremlins, reptilian gremlins, and snow gremlins. The leader of the water gremlins is called the Cacique. Cacique Shark was the leader of the Pacific Sea gremlins. His dominion was plagued with zombies. Cacique Shark inherited the throne at 12 after his parents was consumed by zombies. The Pacific Sea that Cacique Shark ruled included a ninja dojo. Stenson was a ninja gremlin. The dojo held a basketball game. Stenson's teammate waved at him, but he averted his face and continued bouncing the ball. 3 opponents surrounded him and blocked his shot. A teammate yelled that he was open, but Stenson took the shot and missed again. The court squeaked and chirped, and Stenson's team lost. Stenson Google searched bestninjacontest.com and saw that contestants would use ninja magic, invisibility, and a dragon spirit. He went on another website and bought a ninja suit, a katana sword, and a large box of ninja stars. He told his classmates the best ninja contest was canceled. However, his classmates registered anyway. "I wish I could hack the website and delete their applications," he plotted. An office managed the contest. A wigged gremlin sat behind a computer, clicking her mouse. She handed him a sheet of paper. She said, "Rule number 1, you need a partner. Rule number 2, referee orders must be obeyed. Rule number 3, partner cannot be left behind." His pen looped as he signed a contract. Next to partner name, he wrote Lewis Briggs. However, Briggs shook his head no when asked to join Stenson, so Stenson sucked his teeth and left. The helicopter hovered over Zombie Islands. The treetops swayed and Stenson jumped out. He had scraped his arm, tumbling on the ground, when the parachute was wrapped around him. Something heavy whacked him. Briggs yelled, "Stenson, was that you?" "Oh, snap. The helicopter crashed. It's on fire. Smoking all over the place." Then Stenson smelled gasoline. A whipping sound was heard as Stenson slashed out the parachute. The opening showed a dead sloth laid out. The back of the skull was eaten out and the stomach was missing guts. A crow held a finger in his beak and flew over some slouched figures. Briggs sucked on an albuterol pump and held up a bent arrow bow. Stenson yelled into his headset, "Referee, we are here, advise." However, it only played white noise. The headset crackled, then a lady gremlin said, "I am Chun Woo, your referee. There was a crash. If you are safe, we need you to set up an observation post at the mountaintop." A grapple hook shot up and clinked. Briggs' arms felt wobbly and his fingers cramped up. When he looked down, his first aid kit fell off and shrank. Then it busted open on the ground. When Stenson climbed to the top, he saw a coiled snake yards away. A ninja star spins and the snake head falls off. The threat was gone, but Briggs strained to climb up. Stenson yelled, "Stay off the Twinkies," Briggs replied. "F you, Stenson." Chun Woo stared at the monitors. The drone cam showed tons of zombies. When the wind blew away the drone, she wiggled her thumbs over the D-pad and saw treetops. A hand reached up and swatted the drone. She could see a zombie approaching the lens. It chewed on the blades until his mouth bled. Then Chun Woo stared at a blank screen. Weeks before, Stenson struggled with his training. Fan Chu was his classmate. He said, "I hope we get to fight today." Fan Chu bumped into Stenson on the way out of the locker room. He did not apologize. Also, the announcer yelled, "Next match, Stenson and Fan Chu." So Fan Chu taunted. He posed his wide shoulders, thick back, and a caterpillar scar. He pinned down Stenson and a voice shouted, "Okay." Everyone is laughing at me, he thought. However, nobody laughed. Fortunately, the fire alarm went off and everyone lined up outside. Stenson did not have to fight, but Fan Chu glared at him. Now, on Zombie Islands, a zombie swung a tree branch at Stenson. Another zombie tackles him to the ground, knocking away his sword. After retrieving it, he slashed the zombie diagonally, and the trunk slid off. Something thumped. A fuzzy tarantula crawled over his shoe. 6 zombie heads rolled down the slope. Stenson saw 6 decapitated zombies drop to their knees. Briggs stood over them with a sickle, but did not see the zombie mob behind him. The 2 ninjas looked like pineapple pound cake to the zombies. After some static, a voice yelled, "Use an invisibility cloak." At that, they seemed as clear as water and faded away. Zombie screams, grunts, and wails echoed off the mountain. Even though hidden, the ninjas fell along with the ledge. 100 zombies rained along with them. Stenson gulped. The broken off rock splashed in the water. A stone slab laid across Briggs' chest. while a net caught Stenson's leg. The zombies floated to the top surface, blowing bubbles. The area became pitch dark. The headset light was also cut off. Briggs saw Stenson straining. When he looked again, murky water rose, and the slab flipped away. Stenson gave Briggs the dragon spirit pouch and swam away. When Briggs surfaced, he saw 20 zombies in a plume of fire. A fiery dragon towered over all with a coiled body. It bit down on a zombie and shook left to right. Somehow the skull disappeared and the brain looked like a bloody walnut. Stenson and Briggs stood back to back on the bridge, each in a samurai pose and drawn swords. 100 zombies marched toward them. One zombie was 400 pounds and 7 feet tall. It stood over the crowd, raising a large stone over his head. 30 ninja stars flew away from the ninjas. A zombie stood cross-eyed with one between his eyes. The sword slash felt smooth as writing pens. A zombie split in two. Stenson flew across the air and then decapitated the largest one. When the zombie picked up his head, Briggs knocked it into the water. Stenson reached down in the water and pulled Briggs out. When they looked up, a drone flew over them. It blasted. Use ninja magic pouches. At that, both threw small pouches on the ground. The first bag mushroomed smoke, and Fan Chu appeared. Briggs yelled, "Recruit Fan Chu." Stenson spoke some words and Fan Chu grinned. When the second pouch exploded, all three grew 3 inches taller. They also caught fire without burning. Fan Chu shish kebabbed 10 zombies with his spear. Briggs immediately finger jabbed the zombie in the eye. His finger glided with a squirt of blood. Stenson flicked 1,000 ninja stars and the zombies caught on fire. Within seconds, they crumbled to ashes. The drone lit up in a rainbow pattern and displayed success. Best ninja. The basketball court squeaked. Stenson passed the ball to Fan Chu. He passed it to Briggs, and he did a layup. Stenson yelled, "Let's go, team." The whole team high-fived each other. One team member had a ponytail. It was Chun Woo, and she slam dunked it. The scoreboard counted 100-2, with Stenson's team winning. When they looked at the bleachers, 1,000 zombies cursed, cheered, and applauded. When the mascot eagle ran across the court, a zombie chased him. The end. Leprechaun Loot by Antonio Alicea, read by the author. Most leprechauns live in wooded areas. Shamrock City had a water tower with a leather boot logo. It also had 2 skyscrapers covered in glass sheets, which reflected the sunrise. At night, a million city lights glowed in the dark. The football stadium with an eagle mascot logo, beer posters, and a million seats sat to the right of the city. The bullet trains were high-tech and clean. Shamrock City's population was 1 million versus the average leprechaun village of only 30 to 40 residents. An elfish figure took off his ski mask. Underneath the disguise, Clover sang Michael Jackson lyrics. "You've been hit by a smooth criminal." A lock-picking machine, resembling an ice pick, sat on the dresser. She looked in the mirror, licked out her tongue, and twerked. One butt cheek jumped up, then the other side jumped up to a rhythm. She peeked out the window and saw no cop cars. Clover met Linda and L Money in the principal's office. They were just kids stealing Miss Brown's classroom turtle. What was the principal gonna do? Were the detention kids mean? They imagined the principal spanking a student. A tall man called Linda to the office. A suicide note was in his hands. Nobody knew why she wanted to take her life. The trio got in trouble together. They talked Linda out of suicide daily. Her face only lit up when they stole something. They called themselves the LL Girl, Leprechaun Loot. And now they were grown leprechaun looters. Clover, L Money, and Linda smoked cigarettes now. Shamrock City had the Snake, a tubed building with a wraparound road that led up to Gattaspucci's jewelry store. A post office truck was parked outside. The driver waved hello to the girls as they went inside. Clover looked over her shoulders for other stick-up kids. What if the jewelry was too much money? The diamond-encrusted ring L Money wanted to buy was gone. Who could resist this dazzle? Linda stared at a diamond necklace like garlic steak. Clover looked at herself in the mirror, wearing a diamond necklace. It felt like cold ice, like cold metal around her neck. She asked the jeweler, "Do you have matching earrings?" The gambling house was below the bakery, below the steps, where the dog fights were. 20 leprechauns with money in one hand and a bottle of liquor in the other, cheering, cursing, smoking. A pit bull lay whimpering underneath another pit bull, shaking it. Meanwhile, the girls used the distraction to rob the bookie, who was accompanied by 2 blocky guards. Their sunglasses reflected 3 tip-toeing girls. The guard blocked the vault and said, "Shoot me." L Money pressed the gun muzzle against his crotch and said, "Wanna play PP roulette?" The bookie twisted something and opened the door to the safe. Linda loaded several duffel bags with money and then discovered barrels of weed and white powder. They ran out the gambling house like kids getting out of school. Now the gambling house had empty seats, police tape, and cop cars lighting up the streets with blue and red lights. Officer Ryan clicked his pen under his chin. He picked up a cigarette butt and put it in a tube, then pointed at nearby cameras. A hooded leprechaun snitched. One robber called another Clover. They also had GPS tracker on the money. The cell phone showed a blinking dot going down Rainbow Street before pixelating and freezing. Clover said, "Check it, evil leprechaun boo." Me and Linda ran in that dogfight arena and was like, "Listen up, stick 'em up high, because I need a diamond necklace. And my homegirl needs some." "Tell him, Linda." And she says, "Because I need some drugs." And I'm like, "God damn, Linda. Fuck it, me too. I need some mollies, kush, and some liquor. So give me all that shit." And we didn't know. All they knew was Spanish. So we talking for nothing, and the pit bull barked at us, and we both jumped, looking like some suckers. They gave us a lot of money when Linda popped that pit bull, though. Right then and there, they figured it out. At that, Clover gave evil leprechaun a briefcase replete with crisp $100 bills. Once L Money and Linda robbed the Cicada house. The Cicada men had large, bulging eyes, gray bodies, and human-shaped bodies. They vaulted yellow diamonds and the giant yellow diamond. Linda's eyes remained bloodshot as she left her gun in the car. L Money started scolding her, and the Cicada men just stood there, trembling. Linda screamed back at L Money, botching the robbery and leaving without the giant diamond. Later, L Money enraged the evil leprechaun. by just holding a smaller diamond in her hand, like lint. He sucked his teeth and rejected the diamonds. Shamrock City Police Department echoed the conversations of 50 officers. A robbery map filled with red thumbtacks was posted on the wall. The phone rang and an elderly lady with a shaky voice spoke. I would like to report a robbery." Officer Ryan sandwiched the phone between his ears and shoulders, jotting down 1803 Gold Street. He searched the high school yearbook for Linda's photo when she played for the volleyball team and took care of her sick dad before he died. He stuck Linda's photo above Clover and L Money's photos in a pyramid. Then he stared at the map, photos, and police report, and still was confused. Jake was a security guard. His uniform had an art museum patch on his sleeves. His monitor showed two short figures loading paintings into large sacks. He noticed that one had long hair and other had her hair in a bun. They lit up a blunt which bellowed smoke. They crouched under some infrared lights without touching them. However, the alarm went off and the girls ran into each other. They ran out of the art museum with GPS trackers on the goods. At Denki Cave, a toxic green fog covered the ground. A sharp ceiling rock spikes the ground. The evil leprechaun knelt, blowing rum in a chicken's face. When he looked into its eyes, he saw Officer Ryan driving behind the girls. Telepathically, he warned the girls, "The police is behind you. I'm gonna try to cast a spell." He plucked out a chicken feather and wrote in blood, "Officer Ryan" on a scroll. A rip was heard, and a match plumed a small fire. He burned the scroll. However, nothing happened, except Officer Ryan became 3 years younger, and he glowed like an angel. The evil leprechaun pulled bald spots out of his own scalp and bit off his fingertips in rage. Clover spoke to her whimpering chihuahuas. "Damn, y'all couldn't have bitten off a back pocket or something?" She stood in an open vault in her basement. Missing was her aged wine bottles, a giant spaceship diamond, and 2 genie bottles without the genie. Clues found by the vault included hospital gloves, a Mayo de Cinco skull logo lighter, and boot prints leading to an open window. The security cameras showed a ponytail shadow squatting low and petting the chihuahuas. 2 more dwarf shadows tiptoed behind her. That's some old Linda type shit right there, she figured. A cinnamon brown chihuahua sniffed the ground until Clover shouted, "For what? Y'all was here!" She flashed back to Cinco de Mayo at Mackey's bar on Pot Street. She remembered a liquor bottle, the thick glass, and the cap skirt. Then Linda shook her fist at a gecko man. Clover thought, "What in a pet shop?" When Linda slapped the gecko man, his tongue stretched a foot. Then 20 gecko men surrounded her. Another gecko man ran upstairs to get more men. Clover smashed 5 of them with a bar stool, then ran behind the bar to get liquor bottles. Linda swung a pool stick, knocking down 10 more gecko men. When Clover pitched the pool ball, a gecko man fell cross-eyed. She held a broken bottleneck covered in blood. A gecko man held his head, trickling blood down his head. Clover and Linda huffed and puffed, standing over 100 gecko men. But Clover hated Linda now and remembered Linda lighting a cigarette with a Cinco de Mayo lighter. She also remembered Linda lighting a candle because a gecko man broke that light bulb with his tongue. She was certain that happened. A police car splashed rainwater outside, racing with loud sirens. Officer Ryan leaned to the left and turned the steering wheel right. His tires screeched and skid marked the road. The driver's window framed his handsome face and flexed triceps. He yelled into a walkie-talkie, pursuing a red Marlin. Over. Linda looked at her rearview mirror and saw 1,000 skeletons floating behind Officer Ryan's car. She fishtailed her car and drove through a guardrail. She looked out at the cracked windshield and saw an upside-down tree. Why am I upside down, she worried. A figure of a muscular man grew larger and larger, but she could not move. Clover pulled a business card from her doorframe. It had Officer Ryan's info. What if Linda told him everything, she worried. She imagined sitting on the toilet and the whole jail watching. She left a voicemail for Linda without hearing back. Then her phone rang with caller ID displaying, Shamrock Jail. Press 1 to accept. Collect calls from Linda. However, Clover pressed the ignore button. She tried not to imagine going to jail forever, but could not help it. In the interrogation room, El Money waited quietly. She could see Linda through a glass door, lighting a cigarette. She waited in suspense until Officer Ryan opened the door. He introduced himself and asked about Clover when he said, "Your girl Linda gave y'all up." El Money cried. In a video, she could see herself pressing a pistol against somebody's back, then grabbing the money and walking away. The video showed her naked face, blue eyes, freckles, and pointy nose. No mask. She stripped off her clothes and put on an orange jumpsuit. A voice yelled, "You have one phone call." But she didn't know who to call. The evil leprechaun's cave was dimly lit with a giant dragon drawn on the walls. The picture also contained the jackal, a crane, and a crow. A giant cast iron cauldron sat on top of a fire. It boiled water as he read aloud from a book. A black dog trotted behind him. A police car pulled up. A car door slammed and walkie-talkie chirps were heard. The evil leprechaun bushed out into a fire and morphed into a rat. The police lights hurt his eyes and he sucked his teeth. He tried to peek at the book, but the police picked it up. A long, narrow tail wrapped around a pole and disappeared. Officer Ryan kept shouting, "Are you okay, ma'am?" But Clover did not respond. Her windshield was halfway gone. He shook her shoulders, yelled, but could not wake her. Her passenger, Lisette, was lifted on a gurney and taken in an ambulance. Clover awoke to see blood on the passenger seat, dashboard, and floor mats. A broken headlight lay in pieces on the ground. "Don't tell me I killed Lisette," she worried. Officer Ryan handcuffed her and put her in the back seat. It smelled like German Shepherd. She stared at the window until she saw the 3rd precinct. The 3rd precinct was inundated with tombstone gray rats. A voice yelled, "They have rabies, run!" Police leprechauns froze in horror as screeching rats climbed up their clothes. Clover backed up in her cell corner when a large horned rat vomited keys and foamy white saliva. She grabbed the slimy keys and slid open the cell bars. The evidence room had bundled up drugs, hundreds of guns, and tons of row cabinets. Clover noticed a large container of kerosene and dumped the liquid over the whole room. She also grabbed a large envelope marked with hers and Linda's names on it. She dumped out a videotape, Linda's confession statement, and a police report and burned them. Officer Ryan passed out from the chaos and smoke. Clover slapped his face repeatedly, but he did not respond. Finally, she lifted him over a cart and wheeled him out of the burning precinct. A blonde lady with blue eyes held a giant microphone and reported. Jess and Ryan reporting the Shamrock City fire and jailbreak. As you can see, the fire trucks, ambulances, and rats behind me. The camera focused on black rat skeletons and a giant firewall behind the precinct. A police lady sat in the back of the ambulance with a blanket. Another breathed into a brown paper bag. The news also showed Clover fireman carrying Officer Ryan, while the other inmates scattered and disappeared. The Leprechaun's White House, the greenhouse, had Roman pillars, an onion dome roof, and Pantheon statues. President Jeffy's TV displayed the jailbreak news. Inmate saves law enforcement, ribboned across the TV monitor. On the Oval Office desk lay the presidential pardon letter with Clover's name signed at the bottom. Clover's lawyer stood in front of the podium and stated, "We are confident that Clover's record will be expunged completely." A greenhouse spokeswoman said, "We will be partnering with Clover and utilizing her as an item recovery consultant." President Jeffy signed the presidential pardon, and Clover was released the same day. Months later, Clover posted somewhere online, free as a fairy, with a margarita in her hand. She was so happy. She disinterred a bag of money from her backyard and gave it back to the bank. It felt triumphant, not wearing a GPS anklet. A freedom blunt stuck out her mouth, stretching smoke across the room. Meanwhile, Linda robbed her uncle and was sentenced to 10 years in a dungeon where she missed 10 Christmases. The evil leprechaun tried to morph back into a human, but immured himself into a haunted oil painting till Judgment Day. L Money volunteered for Prison Suicide Watch, walking up and down the jail with a clipboard. She sat down in an empty cell and filled out a job application labeled drug counselor. Back in her cell, she had some books: the Bible, a scripture book, and a clinical psychology textbook. When the application asked her education, she wrote GED and some college. A week later, she received a letter stating that she was getting out early on work release for good behavior, and she got the job. When she got home in winter, it snowed. She put on her ski mask, looked at the jewelry store, then threw her mask in the river. The end. Dear Ghoul Friend by Antonio Alicea. The ghoul's world is like man's world. There are organized military units with similar ranks. Included in this story is a series of letters from retired Sergeant Broadway. These were written in his childhood home, school, Fifth Cemetery, Max Catacombs, the Hornet Sea, and the Hellfire. Also included are speeches, eulogies, and other writings. They were preserved to commemorate the ghoul battles. Remember, winners write positive books. Michael Broadway's childhood drawing was enclosed but recently disappeared. It seemed to be a kindergarten art project. It was dated June 22nd, 2006. It had crayon-drawn stars, a tombstone, and a corpse flower plant. He also glittered and scribbled the ghoul mascot, the metallic corpse fly on it. Michael Broadway's second grade report card. Math, 77. Science, 85. English, 90. Teacher's notes. Michael is a great student. We made him the class monitor. He is like an angel, walking behind the other students and writing their deeds. Problems getting him to write with his left hand. Dear Santa Claus, hi, it's me, Michael. I have been good. Can I get a General Jeff figurine, a kitten, and a water gun? Don't come down the chimney. My dad will eat you. Broadway's military exam. Contents are also missing, except for the short story writing portion of it. The Church Crow by Cadet Michael Broadway. A giant crow cawed loudly atop the church tree. When Pastor Ken went to his BMW, the crow somehow dropped the lit matchbook. "Don't kill me," shrieked the pastor. When he dove under the nearby truck, he scraped his arm on the gravel and dust rose. A coyote far off seemed to laugh hysterically. The next day, Pastor Ken dressed a drone with a curved beak and hawk feathers. When the crow flew after it, it got shredded to pieces in the propeller. Later that day, Pastor Ken squinted his eyes, pointing the rifle at the sky. A green orb, black feathers, and guts coalesced into a bird figure. Bang, the gun muzzle jerked up and the pastor raced to his car. The end. In this section, his military letters are enclosed. January 10th, 2023. Dear Sasha, a ghoul killed my sergeant today, bashing him with a shovel till he died. They promoted me to a corporal. I led a raid in the mausoleum and was unsuccessful. After shutting the door closed, we were trapped with enemy ghouls. 3 of my men died. I barely escaped. My hand disattached when I yanked the doors open. Had to write this with my left hand. January 11th, 2023. Dear Abigail, we are fighting in a remote graveyard. It is foggy. The mist blocks the background ridges. The enemy ghouls hid behind tombstones. One killed Private Bill and dragged him to the ground. He lent me a deck of cards that I still have in my pocket. I pulled it out and just cried. I must go. We are going to the Max Catacombs next. It is inundated with walking skeletons. I try to show them my arm stub to get out, but they just sewed on another hand. You know how King Buzzard is, no exemptions. Your Boo Marshmallow. January 30th, 2023. Dear Miss Arlene, my name is Sergeant Broadway. I was in your husband Bobby's unit. I was his supervising officer. I am sorry to write that on January 27, 2023, he died serving his King Buzzard. He had 6 confirmed kills. When we sent him to the catacombs, he was harpooned by the skeletons. Upon discovery of his wounds, he was sent to the medics who failed to stabilize his condition. I wish you the best. February 2nd, 2023. Dear Linda, my name is Sergeant Broadway. Your husband served in my unit. I am sorry to write that your son is missing in action since January 30th, 2023. On that day, we fought a mob of skeletons for hours. Your son was among us in the Max Catacombs. However, since then, he has been absent. We have sent out a recovery team but have failed to discover him. Sorry for your loss. February 8th, 2023. Dear Fatima, my name is Sergeant Broadway. I served in the same unit as your son, Abdul. I am sorry to write that your son has died. He was pronounced dead on February 6, 2023 in the Max Catacombs. Abdul jumped on a live grenade to save his platoon. He was an excellent soldier and a friend. I am truly sorry. February 15th, 2023. Dear Samantha, today we on an intrepid boat. We paddled up the enemy boat on an inflated raft. We climbed up the cables over the sides. However, an enemy soldier fired a shot and we clashed. Private Jones, a huge ghoul that was with us, sprayed 3 enemy ghouls on the ship. I threw 3 enemy ghouls off the boat. I'm pretty sure they died because I saw a shark fin circling around. However, we had to abort mission because the captain came out with a Gatling gun. Haha, I ran out with wood chips and dust flying everywhere. February 17th, 2023. Dear King Buzzard, my name is Sergeant Broadway. I am writing a formal report on the results of today's battle. Tonight we had a rescue, 6 shipwrecked soldiers. The enemy boat shined the spotlight, which I shot at to distract them. However, I do not know how we lost the thumb drive. We have searched the area for it. For as long as we could, we never tire of fighting for you. We are ready to go back and await your orders. Also, a ghoul comrade blew his brains out shooting a rusty gun. One backfired. I got one that shoots sideways. I can't get results with these weapons. I'm going crazy. When my gun jammed, I beat a demon over the head with a large stone. I mashed his brains well. I bashed his brains out of his skull. I bashed him till my face turned blue, and I passed out. Please send the shipment a gun so we could do some damage. February 20th, 2023. Dear King Buzzard, the weapon shipment was intercepted by the enemy. I am requesting an extraction team to rescue us from the hellfire. We were seized by the demons. I have seen comrades carried out, wrapped in sheets. I fear that I am next. We have only the hellfire tree for food. My guts have spilled out of my stomach. I have sent Private Jackson with this letter. He has our exact location. February 23rd, 2023. Dear King Buzzard, this is the Demon King. I am writing to inform you that we have Sergeant Broadway, Private Jenkins, and Private Rodriguez. Enclosed is a sandwich bag full of Private Pox's ashes. We are willing to swap out inmates, receive ransom, or burn these soldiers at the stake tomorrow. Checkmate. February 26, 2023. Dear King Buzzard, this is Sergeant Broadway. Thank you for sending an extraction team. We finally succeeded. A fireman carried Private Jenkins while spraying up some of the demons. Also, a demon general was there, and we got him. Another general was there too, and we got him too. And we got the thumb drives with all their missile codes. March 3rd, 2023. Dear Dr. Patel, I am writing to thank you for patching up my stomach, sewing my toe back on, and bringing Private Jenkins back to life. I smoked a whole quarter pound of medical marijuana prescribed. Can you prescribe another QP? Also, is it normal for smoke to come out of my stomach stitches and bullet holes? Also, why was I prescribed Viagra? March 5th, 2023. Dear Demon King, this is retired Staff Sergeant Broadway. I am writing to let you know that after all the torture, I am okay. Enclosing this letter is some Tic Tacs, cause your breath stink. Y'all got scrawny demon soldiers. King Buzzard Army rocks and y'all don't. Middle fingers. If you see my wife limping, if you see your wife limping, I did that. P.S. I gave the thumb drive to my superiors, cause I'm a super trooper. March 7th, 2023. Peace Summit speech by retired Staff Sergeant Broadway. Dear guest, a couple invited me to dinner. They lived on an airboat in a swamp by the cemetery. We ate this guy, played cards, we smoked a blunt. Her name was Maria. His name was Juan. Later, I saw Juan on the battlefield with flies flying around him. He stared out. I closed his eyes. They still have the wedding cake in a box. I don't know what happened to Maria, but war sucks. I am asking King Buzzard to deoccupy the 5th graveyard, the Max Catacombs, the Haunted Sea, and the Hellfire. Rebuild, repair, and reunite these communities also. Thank you. March 10th, 2023, Sergeant Kano's Funeral Eulogy by Michael Broadway. He used to drink gallons, but after a while, he wouldn't touch it. He used to buy me bud, and I would smoke it. Whenever he saw me, he wanted me to hang out with him. He told the story of the Max Catacombs skeleton that rode with him in a Jeep. It rolled down the window and threw out his pitchfork. It said war was useless. I'm tired of the lies. Rest in peace, comrade. He won our hearts and minds. I walk past the barracks and look at his window and remember. We will now be releasing a dove in his memory. Goodbye, battle. Dear King Buzzard Army Recruit Station, my name is Antonio. I am writing to enlist in the Army. My foster dad was a military man with plenty of war stories. My parents died when mobbed by enemy ghouls. I will make a great soldier because I graduated top of my class with scholarships. Also, I would like to fight for the Ghoul Nation. The end. Glass Islands by Antonio Alicea. The zombie killer bullets are dependable for dispatching zombies. The hollow tip opens like a buzzsaw to penetrate zombie tissue. An added benefit, the ammunition is flammable, causing zombies to plume fire. The patent for the bullets belonged to Dispatch Co., a clandestine laboratory on Glass Islands. Sasha Freeman was a hunter. She wore bird feather earrings and had a dream catcher tattoo on her leg. The woods became foggy. It was like walking through a soft shower. Usually, when she checked the traps, a coyote would be stuck to them. However, a zombie was bound by it. He peeled off his face flap like a costume. He folded it like a pizza and dropped it in his mouth. His breathing sounded like whistles mixed with snoring. Sasha pulled the trigger and the zombie's skull exploded into uneven meat chunks. After Sasha had been home a while, she saw her friend Megan in a peephole. Megan had a brand new ponytail, eyelash wings, and a cute purse. She spun around and showed off her outfit. When Megan sat on the couch, Sasha showed the zombie on her cell phone. It was laying by a tree without a head. The bubbles in the energy drink rose from the bottom of the cup and floated to the top. The lighter flicked and Megan passed the blunt to Sasha. Sasha showed a picture of a red BMW. "That's the one I want." Megan replied, "Come work for Dispatch Co. They pay maximum wages and top zombie bounties." Megan stated, "Glass Island has danger pay and I had to run from a zombie once. I ran down the hall and jiggled the lock doorknob. Then I had to blast the lock off and kick open the door. I shot at a zombie, but I missed it. I thought it was your boyfriend, Sasha. I was off guard. Then it chased me up the roof door. When I shot it, I only stunned it. When I kicked it away, my foot got stuck in his guts. It grabbed me. Then the door flew open and Raul came spraying like Rambo. The zombie shoulder waved and jerked when I rocked. I told him I was traumatized and got a severance package. I could get you in, Sasha." Orientation at Dispatch Co. was in a room with school desks, projection boards, and safety posters. On the questionnaire, she filled in her name and checked off the boxes. The first question asked if she had ever smoked weed. She wrote never. She checked off the ready to work now box. Her cell phone vibrated and displayed her old job number. She pressed the ignore button and put the cell phone back in her purse next to a container of piss. The secretary called out, "Sasha Freeman." A business suit man came out and shook her hand. Damn, this dude's hands are cold, she thought. Glass Island was like Tennessee with mountains. There was no squirrels, but there were gibbon apes in the trees. The leaves flushed down when the helicopter carried some scientists away. It's not even on the map. Glass Island is private, just built, a business suit man said. He handed Sasha an advance for $10,000. That's just landing pay. Remember, maximum wages here. Sasha thought, damn, what is that stench? It's hard to swallow. Corpse throat. Smells like money, Sasha. At that, the business suit man exited. The room was like a hospital room. Cabinets with cotton balls, wound gauzes, and tongue sticks. Plus, it smelled like alcohol. The zombie grunted under his rice bag mask. It lay on a gurney with a swollen foot, discharging a green slime. A scientist held down every limb. Sasha clamped down his arms, but it punched out. Sasha blocked the face before grabbing his wrist. Another scientist towered over her to support her. "It's okay, Sasha. You're doing a good job. You'll get it," a voice said. A business suit man bent over under the hood of the Jeep. He turned the key, then walked to the front bumper. "Okay, we can walk to the suites. I can see them from here," a lady yelled. Sasha noticed a pineapple hanging off a tree. It resembled a golden lantern. Just one pineapple tree here, she thought. She stared at the tree in amazement as the group walked past her. During sunset, she looked around for the group, but they were gone. Lost, she remained quiet and only heard coqui frogs. Sasha now looked at one pineapple. At the one pineapple, it reminded her of the zombie's head covered in a rice bag. She waved her hands in the dark but could not see them. A small light bounced on the chest of a figure. Then it yelled, "Sasha, are you there? It's Dr. Jensen. Come with me." At that, they arrived at the suites, but missed orientation. A suite door shut, and she wept. Dr. Chang was the supervisor scientist. He stood in the zombie cells in his pajamas. In the empty cell, he shone his flashlight, corner to corner, only illuminating a pool of urine, which smelled like ammonia. He slapped his forehead and the thick door closed. He cursed and talked incoherently. A missing zombie has the potential to infect, he thought, especially after the die and the corpse explodes. He pulled the hanging cord and the lights blinked. "Code red," repeated on the intercom. Pop, pop. Dr. Chang stood over a fiery gibbon ape. Then he slammed the door and sped off. A hunchback figure shuffled up the road. He pulled up to it and rolled down the window. A gun muzzle poked out and then jerked in. "Damn it, Jackson, I almost shot you. There's a zombie on the loose. Get inside." Then the car screeched and disappeared up the road. Jackson stared at his knuckle stub in horror. His sleeve cuffs were bloody up to the elbows. The trees seemed to blur and double. He looked around to see the zombie. Too late. It pinned him down to the ground with his mouth wide open. Sasha looked at the CGI zombie explode as her plastic gun vibrated. "No go" is displayed on the screen. Then she lined up her sights on a peeking zombie. Pop, pop. Then another zombie went down. "Great job," displayed. The bass from the speakers shook the ground. A smoke machine bellowed smoke, making the background hazy. Then a CGI business suit man surrendered with his hands up. The monitor flashed red when she shot him. Fratricide displayed and she snapped her fingers in disappointment. Damn, I've got to qualify with this stupid pistol, she thought. Boom, boom, boom. When Sasha answered the door, knock, Dr. Chang stood there chugging an energy drink. Dr. Jensen was behind him yelling into a phone. Get everyone out, we got a zombie loose. Dr. Chang made a hand motion to go with them. When Sasha sat in the back seat, she saw mannequin parts. And the Jeep jerked forward. When Sasha checked her holster, it was empty. When Dr. Chang stopped the car, the roof thudded like pineapples dropping. A gibbon zombie stood up on the hood and snarled. Its eyes glowed red and it stuffed a brain piece in his mouth. Then 3 more gibbons rained down. A gibbon skull spat blood after a gunshot. Another gunshot and another gibbon flies back. When the car rolled back, a gibbon flattened into a hairy pancake. Then a tree branch slammed down, blocking it. Then Sasha gulped in frozen horror. Dr. Jensen stood outside with the Jeep, with the door ajar, when a mob of zombie gibbons turned to face her. Everything beat when Dr. Chang squeezed the trigger. He chopped down a gibbon like a tree and reloaded. A row of 5 zombies vibrated and rocked to a giant blob of blood. Then a large blood crater formed after Dr. Jensen tossed a grenade at them. Dr. Chang turned the key, but the Jeep did not start. Dr. Chang yanked out the jump box and connected it to the battery. When he turned the key, the engine growled. When the 3 sat back inside, a balled-up gibbon snapped at Dr. Jensen. The blood crossed down her elbows to her wrists. Sasha punched the gibbon as hard as she could, but did not flinch it. Finally, Dr. Chang blasted through the gibbon and Dr. Jensen. Sasha backed up in a corner, holding her face. A lady with a digital camouflage uniform stood up in a Humvee. She pointed the 240mm at the mob of monkeys. Sergeant Angelina Costa yelled, "Pull up, I can see them." Her driver, Jesse, kicked down on the gas pedal, spraying clumps of mud with the back tires. The zombie man balled up in the shade. It dragged the gibbon over a stone and raised another one above his head. When he smashed his skull, a pinkish brain protruded. A gulp sounded. It swept away the branches to see Sasha and Dr. Chang. A snap attracted their attention. Sergeant Costa faced the bushes also. The dust kicked up when she sprayed a 240. The zombie grunted into silence. The bottom of the bush remained trimmed diagonally. When they walked over to the zombie, it looked like cranberry sauce poured over a body. Then a crow landed on the hood of the Humvee with an eyeball. Sergeant Costa opened a laptop to a bird view display of treetops. The drone hovered over Jackson, chewing on a mannequin's head. A red dot flashed on a map by the tributary. Then the drone dropped the net, entangling the zombie. It curled up in a ball, wrapped in lines. The Jeep was stopped by a zombie. Sasha catches a tossed Beretta, walks over to the zombie and stops. When she pulled the trigger, the zombie shook in convulsions. Then she shot it again until the head opened. She kicked his leg and it remained still. She nods to Sergeant Costa. Dr. Jenkins held a shaky pistol with a horseshoe bite and purple eyelids. She cried blood and wailed, then aiming at Sasha, Dr. Chang, then herself, then finally straight ahead, pop, pop, the end. The Duke of Frogs by Antonio Alicea, May 16, 2023, in Silk City. A billboard showed a frog lady wearing a silk dress and a witch's hat. The brand name got a spoochie arched over her head like a halo. She had a blue frog's face with her long eyelashes. poked out lips and arched eyebrows and a playful expression. The large ad had a braided frame, a deep crimson-colored background, and visual beauty. It towered over Silk City's stone mansions, open-air markets, and silkworm nurseries. Manny was an orphan, only 13 years old. On the way to school, he saw the discount store. At the entrance, a toy frog swam in a bucket of water. He still had the $5 his mother gave him. If she was still alive, maybe she could help him with the bullies. A loose German shepherd charged him like a werewolf, and he ran up the block. He sprinted through Park Avenue, Melrose Avenue, and finally Cortlandt Avenue. The dog was gone, and he huffed and puffed while walking in the quick steps. 203 was the detention room. It had 20 seats, an artificial skeleton, and a "Don't Do Drugs" poster. Dennis and Brutus was Manny's friends. Brutus wrote something on paper and passed it to Manny. He read, "Me and Dennis are going to the forest after this. Miss Daniels surprised the boys with, 'Let me see that note.' What if she called their parents or extended their detention time? She made the boys write, 'I will not pass notes 100 times.' Plus the principal walked into the room. The next day, the boys lounged in the treehouse. It was boarded with plywood, had a tinted top, and an open window. The boys stacked their right hands above each other and swore an oath to never disclose the location of the treehouse. All agreed. A marshmallow white butterfly floated and disappeared. A slouched frog wore an onion crown and stood in front of a glass tank full of middle finger-sized silkworms. They were cream white and spinning silk balls, crawling like oversized maggots. When he turned away, he saw Manny. Then he turned away and saw Manny again, focusing as he recognized him. He lifted a skull scepter and pointed, but Manny just froze in confusion. The door closed behind him. The locking mechanism clicked, and after a brief delay, a dog barked and scraped at the door. Manny tried to crouch in the darkness, but a torch illuminated his face. The green men had red, bulging eyes, a yellow underbelly, and slimy skin. Manny jabbed one in the mouth, but another frog man grabbed his arm. When he looked up, 20 frogmen piled over him, and the Duke of Frogs floated toward them. Bulldog was a frogman soldier. He stood over the other frogs like Goliath, with webbed feet and an orange underbelly. Manny was bounded in chains that clinked along the floor. "Let me go," he yelled. He was dragged until he came across a dungeon littered with corpses. A frog lady in scrubs scooped maggots from a body into a small skull bowl. Her tongue darted out to catch a jumbo fly. Her throat moved down as she gulped. Bulldog chained Manny to the wall. A voice yelled, "We get your buddy next." Manny read the overhead sign. Fly farm. He searched his chain for a weak link, but discovered heavy, shiny, and thick links. A corpse dangled from the ceiling. How did he know if God would show mercy? He remembered when his Aunt Diana told him, "If you kill yourself, you'll burn in hell." Manny shook his head. If it wasn't for hell, I'd join him too. The corpse's chest worked with maggots. Manny looked for an escape, but found everything blocked off. Brutus led the frogmen to the treehouse. Inside were Tales from the Crypt comic books, spread out on a table. A poster of Macho Man Randy Savage and a baseball bat by the entrance. When he peeked down, he saw 3 frogmen and Brutus. When Brutus pointed up, Dennis pulled back the rubber band on the slingshot. Splat! A stone bounced off a frogman's head and he fell. He shot 4 times but ran out of stones. Brutus and the frogman pinned down Dennis, and he kicked until they tied him up. Never would Manny believe that he would see Dennis or Brutus again, yet some frogmen led Dennis into the Fly Farm dungeon. When Manny looked closer, Brutus mocked, "Sorry," and Manny retorted, "Judas." At that, Brutus laughed. One frogman was really a brown toad man. He dangled a large diamond in front of Manny and stuffed it in his mouth. Manny tried not to swallow or choke on it, but his mouth was taped up. The frogman left Dennis and Manny chained up in a dungeon. The dining hall seated the frogmen and toadmen by a dinner table with set food. The fireplace sounded like light showers. Yellow Belly was a mohawk-haired frogman. He lifted a silver spoon and sucked up a sweat bead. "What y'all cinnamon boys gonna do with that thief?" he said. Across him was Knight, a toad man. He signed something and gave it to his servant. "He'll die and the corpse flies will eat him, Greenie," he replied. "They're just kids. The Duke will listen to you." Knight slurped the fly off his spoon and dipped it in some fly cereal. After hearing Knight say, "But they know about us, and where we are, they will expose us," Yellow Belly agreed with him. "You're right." At the dungeon, Dennis sat in a corner with a black eye, busted lips, and some missing teeth. He passed out and dreamt of Mosca, the Prince of Flies. The prince handed him a silver goblet encrusted with emeralds and filled with purple wine. He led him through a commodious mansion filled with art. They saw a giant Tyrannosaurus skeleton that stood as high as the ceiling. "A gift from the Tsar of old times," said a voice. Dennis tried to pinch his arm but could not wake up. "You want to know how to escape here?" said Mosca. Dennis shook his head up and down. "What do you think?" he thought. He tried to understand what the giant fly said and woke up in a dungeon. All the flies flew away from him, but he was still immured by thick, solid dungeon bars. The Duke of Frog's master bedroom door swung wide open. 3 butt-naked frog women ran out into the hallway. Tina had her panties balled up in her hand and disappeared. He scolded out, "That's all right, I called my other bitch." He stumbled and pulled up thongs, then dropped them back on the floor. He dozed off. When the guards carried him to his bed, they saw a porno on the big screen. 6 frogmen gangbanging a lizard lady. The back of her head bumped a beat. The Duke held out his remote and blacked out the TV. He yelled, "Get the fuck out my room. It's because of y'all I ain't getting no pussy. Step y'all shit up." Brutus stood at the mansion guest room. The bed had a ceiling with curtains. Through the thin fabric, he saw a hazy image of himself, running his hands over his head. A sigh was heard. He imagined a frogman calling him a blue frog. "Buddy fucker." The empty liquor bottle reminded him of his military dad. His dad would say, "No soldier left behind." He remembered. An ashtray on his lap was filled to the top. He put out another blunt and rested it across as his head pounded. He tried to forget but imagined Manny talking from the coffin. "Brutus, you a traitor." He knelt by a brick wall and banged his head till it knotted up. He tried to forget, but he couldn't. At the mansion courtyard, frogmen carried out stretchers. Bulldog, the tallest frogman, pinned down a toad man. Slash was a stocky toad man. He growled and shouted, "Fuck you, Bulldog. Fuck you, Duke of Frogs. Fuck the whole frogman creation." Bulldog handcuffed him at the wrist and ankle. Another 2 toad men were arrested with him. A frogman wrote down what another frogman told him. The latter held an ice pack to his black eye. "Where y'all taking us?" a voice yelled. Someone replied, "To the dungeon." Manny stared at the scroll in horror. The frogman held out a next-of-kin form. "Damn, I don't want to die," he worried. Dennis was puking something resembling oatmeal. An abrupt, "Fuck you," echoed further down. The shouting got louder and louder. Were the frogmen going to execute them now? Bulldog held back a shackled Slash as he dragged 4 men with him. When he got to the dungeon, he towered over Dennis and Manny. He roared, "I'm gonna smash y'all." "I hope he ain't coming in here," Dennis worried. Then they threw Slash and 3 other Toad men with them. Slash stared down Dennis and Manny, frowning all the way down. Then after a brief delay, "Y'all wanna bust out of here?" The Duke of Frog's bedroom stretched out with frog statues, a cascade and many couches. Somehow he swallowed a fly that climbed up his brain. The Duke could see Mosca in a triple scoop crown, an oval buckled belt, and a Miami-cut platinum chain. He heard, "I am Mosca, Prince of Flies. I am going to..." Then saw an ink blot. He heard a voice yelled out, "The Toad men are defeating the Frog army." When he looked in the hallway, he gulped and saw Slash choking out Bulldog. Also, Manny was stomping out Yellow Belly, and Dennis picked up a spiked club off the ground. The couch screamed when the Duke pushed it against the door. Boom, boom, boom. The door exploded to sawdust and splinters when Dennis clubbed it down. All of the Duke's guards were unconscious. One hung off his foot off the chandelier. The Duke fenced Slash until he dropped his sword. Then a sword pointed at his throat. Slash smirked with wild eyes, standing over him. At the courtyard, Manny and Dennis followed Brutus as he tiptoed away from the entrance. A club spun 100 times before spiking the wall, inches from Brutus's head. Manny pinned down Brutus and Dennis stomped him down. Dennis froze briefly after each stomp, grunting, straining, and clenching his teeth. The blood polka-dotted his boots. Brutus's head skipped up with every kick, and his legs shook like a seizure. "Payback, bitch!" Dennis shouted. Brutus saw white flashes until he dozed off. Slash smiled, standing over a shut-eyed Duke of Frogs, waving his arm at the boys. Dennis waved back, standing over a shivering Brutus. Manny looked around for valuables and looted a silkworm crate, gold bars, a priceless oil painting. Slash flattened the Duke crown and sat on the ducal throne. Knight stood on his right and another Toad man stood to his left. He gave a speech holding a skull and the boys walked away. Soon after, Manny was adopted by the Johnsons. They had 2 sons and Dennis still came around. All were invited to Slash's coronation. The boys wore tuxedos and brought Slash a metallic green June bug, which flew in loops annoyingly. It bumped into the walls, until a pink line shot across the room, and Slash gulped it. A frog with a priest robe opened the book and married Slash to the Frog Queen. Silk City now had a giant building screen showing Slash on a throne. Slash's Spoochie displayed over his tilted crown. The Frog Queen was behind him. They married to unite the Toad and Frog Nation. Slash promised equality and appointed the Frogman Goliath as his prime minister and ended the Toad and Frogman War. The end. Treasure Room Zombies by Antonio Alicia. Dedicated to the most generous, the most kind, as well as my dad, my beautiful mom, and my brother Dan. The Nelsons, Nan, Jim, Jeremiah, Shauna, Ida, Shannon, and Morgan. Maya and the new baby, Titi Diana, Eastburn Avenue, Uncle Richie, Primo Jaimito, Liz, Rodney, Stevie, Sally, the city of Knoxville, North Knoxville Branch Library, Edgewood Park, Northview Apartments, New York, all public schools, especially PS 35, IS 145, Alfred E. Smith High School, and Roberto Clemente Auxiliary School, as well as my GED teacher, Mr. Jeff Bukes. Thank you for teaching me to read and write well enough to write a book and teach.